Dear dirty potatoes. I like it. For those of you who made reservations at Balthazar at 9 p.m., call them. You're telling you're a little late. That's how we roll here. Sorry. Right? Sorry, Marnie. Glad you. Yeah, I know you. I know. Okay. You'll be a little late unless you want to leave soon. That's fine. We go late. We take our time. We only do this once a month. It's been so long since we met, y'all. A lot has happened. We want to take a couple of minutes to ground ourselves in the story of this moment, in the week ahead, in how to be better at showing up with and for each other, even when we mess it up. How we still show up to try and be better. So I want to share a few words with you, and they include a teaching from the Torah story that is rolling out in a synagogue near you this weekend, and also the holiday that's coming up ahead. So this vintage image is one that Gemini helped me create. The prompt was easy. A multiracial Jewish family at Thanksgiving being argumentative. There was just one take. I didn't have time for edits. Folks, I don't know about you this coming Thanksgiving. Is anybody here dreading it? Is anybody here skipping a particular Thanksgiving invitation because you know there'll be a conversation that frankly you just do not want to really face right now? No? Is that just me? Have any of you been, are, will be in a situation maybe like this with family of birth or family of choice, colleagues, neighbors, fellow citizens with whom the conversation can become so complicated, so painful, that we rather just shut the door? That's where we are. It's real. And there are situations in which we're invited to show up in the presence of others that it's not just uncomfortable, it absolutely defeats, denies my presence. And we are at a moment right now in the world and here where a lot of those showing up with each other for the sake of bridge building and peace, and the Jewish term shlom bayit, peace in the home, even with those with whom we're deeply, deeply, deeply indifference with, it's really pushing our boundaries right now in ways that are terrifying and sometimes uplifting. Whatever happened at the White House today between Zohar Mamdani and Donald Trump, okay, hopefully that's a good omen for the future. I think things are a little more complicated. A lot of us are paying attention to the story in the news, which is growing rapidly, where a conversation on the radio between Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes is sparking a lot of fear and a lot of rage among many. A line has been crossed. You're sitting with someone with whom you have a difference, and how far do you go for the sake of conversation with people whose opinions really, really, really are not just different than yours, but dangerous? I want to acknowledge that this is the first time our community is meeting since the high and holy days. And I want to acknowledge a hurt that we created by inviting Mamdani, or rather responding to their request and welcoming them, him and the other elected representatives on Yom Kippur. And I know that for some of you that was hurtful, whether because we did not announce ahead of time or his mere presence, what it justifies or signifies, not an endorsement, but a welcome. Did we go too far in creating a space for bridge building? for hearing each other, for witnessing. For some, yes. For others, no. I think we're all being asked right now to test our limits, to push the edges of our empathy, to figure out with whom we stand, with whom we don't. Where does it feel safe? Where does it push us? Ideally, with a goal of building bridges. It's so much easier to close the door and to build walls. Right? You've all been teenagers. You shut the door. I don't want to talk to you. Okay, a couple of hours later, theoretically. Doors are real, and protection is necessary, and sometimes walls are helpful too. But we really need to build better bridges as we can and know when to put up a wall for protection and for peace. But I prefer bridges. So I want to share a quick story with you. We're saying goodbye to that. This is an actual photo. This is my brother, Rabbi Benny Lau, a hero of mine and of many, who's a religious, Zionist, peace-loving father, grandfather, leader in Israel. And this is him speaking on November 4th, just a few weeks ago in Tel Aviv. I took this photo. This was the 30th anniversary of the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin, Israel's prime minister, who was part of the generation that decided for peace instead of war, and was assassinated by a Jewish terrorist on that Saturday night in Tel Aviv. And with this murder of Rabin, the peace process and so much of the hope for better days for Palestinians and for Israelis became a nightmare of extremism and fundamentalism. And we're still seeing those awful, awful, and worse waves 30 years later. This public memorial for Rabin hasn't taken place for 5 years. There was COVID the last 2 years, but this year there were close to 100,000 people in Tel Aviv to say no to violence and no to extremism, no to the right-wing government that has hijacked Israel, and yes to peace and to Rabin's vision. Amen. Shalom. We sang it with such conviction. So I was very honored to go with my brother and be there at this gathering. But I want to tell you what he said. It was quite controversial. My brother stood on the stage and said, 3 days before October 7th, 2023, I was sitting in a sukkah, which was a sukkah of dialogue. This is after a year of the judicial reform, millions of people in the streets, a real question of who are we as a nation. And there was a project my brother was part of where people met in a sukkah, those tabernacles of the harvest holiday, to have a conversation, especially across differences. It's not very different in Israel, not very difficult, nor here. And all these dialogues, trialogues, conversations, let's see how we can meet and hear each other. And he was at a sukkah in Sderot, a city in the south, at the home of Moshe Ochayon, a good friend of his, colleague, who was a Likud voter. And they had a conversation. And then into the sukkah entered 2 delegates of Otzma Yehudit, Jewish Power. That is the Kahana, racist, Jewish supremacy party, where Itamar Ben-Gvir, I can't believe I just mentioned his name here, is the leader of. The religious Zionism that for me is, and for many, is an abomination. And my brother walked out of the sukkah. And that became a big media story in Israel, because Rabbi Lau walks out of the sukkah with Otzma Yehudit. Where's the dialogue? Where's the respect? And my brother said, I have my limits. So, well, so it's exactly what happened in Tel Aviv. And he's like, whoa, 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 don't clap. Because what I want to tell you tonight, he said to Tel Aviv, is that October 7th happened 2 days later. And every Shiva visit that I went to, and every home for the weeks and months after, people asked me, Rabbi Lau, would you walk out of the sukkah again? And he said to Tel Aviv that night, I promise you I will not walk out of the sukkah again. The enemy outside is so fierce, we have to get over the enemies within. Even if it's difficult, they are my brothers. I would not walk out of the sukkah, even for Otzma Yehudit. So, okay. We're like, really? What a... And like, yeah, yes. And really? Ben Gvir? I don't know. Would you? Like, how far do we go, right? To invite the other, to be in presence with. My brother spoke, was clapping, he said more beautiful things. He stepped down. Yitzhak Rabin's daughter, Dalia Rabin, philosopher, was there, went to him and said, wow, Benny, okay, let's think about it. But thank you for your words. And then my brother and I and a few of his kids got into the car and drove to Jerusalem, and he got a lot of WhatsApps and a lot of things. And I turned to him and said, why were you so mad at me last night about having Mamdani at Kol Nidrei? I'm like, I get it. But like, do you understand that in order to create a bigger coalition of the things we do agree on, you're sometimes going to have to be in conversation with people that it's hard to be in conversation with? And he looked at me and said, it's not the same. I'm like, I know, but... To my brother's credit, last week he got on a YouTube chat with Michael Ben-Ari, one of the leaders of Otzma Yehudit. I haven't heard the talk yet, but he said, we're going to be in dialogue. I'm not telling us who to be in dialogue with, and I'm acknowledging that it's tough, and we sometimes mess up. And we're going to try and do better, and hurt none, and heal more, and build bridges as best we can. And yet, from my brother, I am learning that we must try harder. Figuring out what we do have in common, what we do share, because frankly, the enemy is beyond and without a fierce. And we got to be standing together with coalitions that might push us. But we got to figure this out in some way, including with our mayor. See what happens, y'all? It's really, really moving fast. To ground us in Jewish wisdom, I want to share one more quick story with you with words of advice from our elders. Ready for a little story? Okay. Since your reservations at Belfast are a teeny bit late. But this will be fast. There's a story in our tradition that is repeated in this week's Torah portion in the book of Genesis. The parasha is Toldot. It's got a lot of great stuff in it. Jacob and Esau are born to Rebekah's, the mother of two nations. And Isaac, their father, becomes a big businessman, which is weird because he's like this trauma victim of the binding. And everybody thinks of him as like, basically he's in PTSD. So nobody has many expectations for Isaac, but he becomes a big business guy and digs up his father's wells. Abraham dug a lot of wells as the leader of a large business of cattle, a nomad, and needed water. He would dig wells. The locals, the Philistines, filled those wells up. It was part of the fight of scarcity and land that is depicted in Genesis. So the wells of Abraham were filled up. Isaac opens them up. He becomes known as the one who digs up his father's wells. And there's the metaphor here for how do we deal with our ancestral legacy, with some of our intergenerational trauma, but also the gifts that we got. How do we make the wells our own? Isaac digs up the wells, and again, his neighbors, the Philistines, start arguing with him. Whose well is this? Whose water is this? Whose land is this? Mine, yours. It's not pretty. They name one of the wells Sitna, animosity. They name another one of the wells Esek, bad business. And then God comes to him in a dream and says, why don't you chill out and why don't you stay on this side of the river for a little bit? And then the scene that I'm about to describe to you happens. After many fighting between Isaac and the local Philistines, who might later become the Palestinians, Philistines were from the Greek islands. Somehow they end up in Canaan. There's a lot of history about it. And they will stay there. And in the Torah, in Genesis, the Philistines and Isaac, they're not still the Jews, they're kind of the Hebrews, are skirmishing until one day the following thing happens. Avimelech, the king of the Philistines, comes over to Isaac with an entourage of leaders and says it's time for truce. It's time for peace. Let's not fight anymore. And Isaac says, really? You were just so mean to me a couple of days ago. And Avimelech says, yeah, let's sign a treaty together. And then they say to him the following thing. If you can see, thank you. They say to him, here's what we'll do. We'll have a feast. Im ta'aseh imanu ra'a ka'asher lo nega'anucha, that you will not do us any harm, just as we have not molested you, we haven't hurt you, but we've always dealt kindly with you, and now we send you away in peace. And now they say 4 words. Ata, ata, baruch Adonai. Now, ata, you bless the divine. And then they have a party, a big presidential feast. And then they walk off the next day having signed hands. And that is the end of the war between Isaac and the Philistines in the book of Genesis. Now these 4 words, ata, you can hear the Hebrew, it's almost the same thing. Ata, baruch havaya. Ata, baruch havaya. You now bless all. You. It's a meditative chant. What they're telling him is, look, what was, we can be in the past. We can make a lot of decisions based on past hurts. That's not going to get us very far. We can make a lot of predictions based on the future. Fears of what's going to happen. That's legitimate. But that too will not get us super advanced in peace, coalition building. Let's be here now. Right now, what are you seeing? Right now, what do you need? Right now, what is the living well we can dig together? Remember, these fights are about wells, about water, about the well. So they say, let's dig a well together, Isaac. Let's dig the well together. Ata, baruch Adonai. Be here now, you. So I'm leaving this, dropping this invitation here for us as we head towards our Thanksgiving tables, our Hanukkah and Christmas, long Facebook chats, if you're still there, which is odd, or wherever you are conversing with each other. These are not easy times. We are asked to make strange decisions about who will sit around the table. How brave are we going to be to talk about what hurts? Later this evening, in a little bit, we'll talk about our courageous conversations, one of Lab Shul's way of inviting us to be brave and listen to each other's hurts. But just for now, I want to leave you with these 2 teachings from the mystical tradition about being well diggers together and finding ways to build the bridges that we need. So the Zohar, the mystical book, says, what is this be'er ma'im chaim that Isaac dug, that we sang about in the Song of Songs? A well of living water where the separated ones are received into oneness. The well is the place where we attempt, despite the difficulties, some unity. And the Midrash says, Kol shechofer be'er oseh shalom. Whoever digs a well creates peace. So we charge each other to go be well diggers, well wishers, well beings. May we get beyond the things that hurt us. May we be protected from the very scary things out there. And I hope that we as a community will do better by creating safe spaces for all the voices, welcoming beyond and beyond, to make this world better, to dig the wells of peace. Shabbat Shalom. Into this need for refuah and healing.